This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Kuf Yud, and we're holding on the bottom of Kuf Kasamid Beis, wrapping up this incredible Mesechta B'Siyat Shemaya. I don't know about you, but when we started Kachim, we started Zevachim. It was a scary endeavor, and Baruch Hashem, slowly but surely, day by day, we are getting there. And we like all the learning for this month, the month of Teves, to be an incredible Schos Aliyas Neshama. Aryeh ben Ya'akov, it should elevate his neshama to an incredibly high place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. So Amar Ella Amar Abaye, Amar Le Abaye. So we have another kasha on the way that Rabbah explained the machlokes to Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim, kasha of Abaye. V'aki kaksiva. Chuka, that where does the Torah say that it's a chayk? Where does it say that it's a decree? Behaktara dipenemu dechsev. It's only by the burning inside, which would seemingly indicate that when it comes to this, would seemingly indicate again the pasuk of there, the pasuk uses this word chukah, this word that it's a chayk, which shows us that it's an absolute, integral, essential part of the carbon. So says the Gemara, this is a seemingly, you would have to agree that when it comes to burning the ketairas, is included in this pasuk. So asks the Gemara, asks Abaye, how can you suggest any other way? So says Abaye, Abaye, I'll tell you what's going on over here. You're right, says Abaye. Avada, no one can argue by the Aktara, by the burning of the Ketairas and Yom Kippur Bifnim. Everyone agrees that it's a chokah. Everyone agrees that it's integral. And there's no way you could burn anything less than that which the Torah says, the 2 handfuls. What's the machlokes? The argument is when you burn the Ketairas and Yom Kippur, bachotz, the machlokes is, Chachamim say we learn one from the other, and therefore it says, well, going to be integral. It says, well, going to have the requisite amount. Whereas Rabbi Lazar disagrees. Amar Rava, so that was Abaye's kasha on Rava and Abaye's teretz. So Rava fires back. Amar Rava, we're about 10 lines at the bottom. The first one line is Amar. And if you're telling me that according to Rabbi Lazar, excuse me, if you're telling me, yeah, is there any need to tell me Pnei Michotz? It's so obvious if you don't learn one case of Chotz from the next, then the whole Chiddush that you Abaye are telling me is that Afi Rav Elazar, we don't learn how Pnei Michotz is an absolute davar pashut. But the Gemara says, where do you not learn Chotz Michotz? Where do you know that from, Rava? So Mahi, what is this? Titania, we learned in a I would think if someone brings up less than a kizayis of the kemitza, upachas mekizayis emurim. V'amenasech upachas mishal sheslukin. If he does nisach hayayin, excuse me, less than 3 lugin yayin, pachas megim lugin mayim, or less than 3 lug of water by nisach hamayim, I would think that what yechayev, because it's not the requisite amount. Hamalaymar, says the Torah, la asois, and from there we learn out ala sholem chayev ve'ino yechayev ala choser. The what do we learn out from la asois? The only chayev if you bring up a complete carbon, a complete aktara, a complete ketairas v'chulu, but not if it's choser. V'abachas mishleishes lugim the isbu kama zaitim. When it's less than 3 lugim, it still has many zaitim, and yet, even though there is at some level of quantity there, the Chachamim do not learn out chutz michutz, and therefore frek to Rava. If they don't learn out chutz michutz, they clearly are not going to learn out chutz mipanim. So now, Rava has to suggest, Ela Amar Rava, on the last line. So Rava says, I'll tell you what the machlokes of Laz and the Chachamim is. Kigoyin, dekavinu, shnei chatzoi pras. Says Rava, no, the case of Mishnah is going to be where one designates two measures of a chatzi pras. Okay, so what does that do for us? As we turn over to Kaf Yudam and Aleph, bimana. So we have two chatzi prases in one mana. So Mar Sava, Rav Elazar is going to hold Kaviyas Mana Milsahi. The fact that it's in one vessel, it's in one kli, that gives a chashivos to it. And therefore, you're not going to be chayiv unless you burn both chatzi prases. So the discussion is, says Rava, how do we view placing it inside a mana? That's Rav Elazar. Whereas Umar Savar the Chachamim hold lav milsi, putting it into a kli does not make it. Meaning, when I have two chatzi prases in one keli, does the kli act to combine them or not? Amar Rava, hash talamanda Amar, kiviyuta demana v'loy klomu, like according to the Chachamim, kava shisha lepar. If you designate 6 lug of wine for a niso chayayin for a par, umashach mein arba, and then you did a meshicha, you withdrew 4 of them, ve'krivam bachot, and you brought them outside, chayiv. Why? Because even though they're in a kli, the kli does not act to combine them. Sheru'uyin la'ayil. For 4 of them are fit for an ayil. They might not be fit for a par, but they're fit for ayil. Kava arba la'ayil umashchem shleisha ve'krivim b'achot chayiv. Sheru'un le'kevesh. Because they're fit for the keves, for the lamb. Chasru kolshu ve'krivim b'achot potter. But if all these cases you're missing a little bit, and you're makrivit b'achotz, then you're going to be potter. Even the chachamim are going to agree that you're not chayiv. Why? Because anything less than 3 lug is not fit for any carbon. So this is how Rava understands machlokes of Laz and the Chachamim. Again, we start with Abaye. Abaye had a kasha, he of his pshat, whether you alfin on a chutz mepnim. Rav had a kasha, and he said, no, that's not how you learn it. Rather, the machlokes is whether the kviyuta demana being in one keli combines them or not. Rav Ashi Amar, says Rav Ashi. Now this Rav Ashi is really going back to what we just said a moment ago at the bottom of Amid Beis, and Rav Ashi is answering up Abaye's kasha. Nisach me'akar lo yalfi rabbanan. Why not? Avagav the chutz mechutz lo yalfi, which this is Rava's kasha, that even though you don't learn chutz mechutz, still haktara me'aktara yalfi. Avagav the chutz mipanim. So there is a svara to say, says Rav Ashi, even if you're not learning chutz mechutz, there still would be a hava minute to learn chutz mipanim. Why? Because they're both forms of haktara. Now we continue. We're 10 lines down. We're at the 2 dots and Kuf Yudam and Aleph. V'kulan shechasru. If any of these items are lacking in any bit, then taught us the Mishnah, then one is not chayif. Frakti Gemara yibayilu. Chisaron dechot shmei chisaron or lo shmei chisaron. If the chisaron, if the reduction, if the lacking in that which you're bringing is done outside the Beis HaMikdash, is that considered a chisaron? Meaning, Rashi explains that what happened over here is Haitzion Shleiman. And I apologize, I didn't realize that we're blocking Rashi. That's inappropriate to block Rashi. Here we go, now you can see the Rashi. Says Rashi, you brought it outside Shalem. You brought the whole requisite amount out to the Beis HaMikdash, and then it was lacking. Is this considered Shmei Chisaron or not? The shayla of the Gemara. Me, I'm reading and explains the Gemara, Kivin Denafik Kifsalu. Mali Chazer, Mali Yeser. Once you brought it outside, it becomes basal. So who cares if it is reduced or not? You're going to be chayiv oidilma, or maybe yoyit seidi sebenein less elohi, or perhaps if that which was brought out that is now be'en, that is now in its full quantity, then you're going to be chayiv. If not, not. Omer Abaye says, Abaye Tashem, I'll bring you a raya. Rav Eliezer pointer sheikarav es kulon. You only chayiv if you're makriv of all of it. So what do we see? We see all of it has to be there, and if it's chaser, it's not going to be true. Omer lei, Rabba bar Rav Chanan, L'Abaye, wait, Rav Eliezer pashit, Mar, from Rav Eliezer, can you answer up Abaye Shaila? But I don't understand. We had a Shaila, not according to Rav Eliezer, Rav Elazar. Shaila was according to the Chachamim. According to Rav Eliezer, there was no Shaila. So Amar lei Abaye responds, Shmiya lei minei. Dear Rav, I heard from Rav, Ad kan lo palig Rabban alei Rav Eliezer, eladi sebeinei. Aval b'chisarein, moidalei delav, chisarein aval chisarein, moidalei, lav dechasar b'achot. So in the case that they are moidas and not that it was chasar b'achot, so we see that the chachamim are going to be moida, that you're not going to be chayiv. Says the Gemara, Tasheman, La the Chazar Bachot, La the Chazar Benim. So there's no raya. Tashema. Because the Chazar Ikrivam Bachot Pater. In all the cases, if they're Chazar and you're still makriv them, says the Raizir Chazar Lam the Chazar Bachot, La the Chazar Benim. So the Gemara concludes that we do not have a conclusive raya either way. We continue with one last shtickle before the new Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Makriv Kach. If someone is a Makriv Kach, Mamai, why, if you bring up something that is not attached to the basar, frak the Gemara, that are attached to the basar, Vayika Chatzitza, should not be chayiv because it's a chatzitza. That which you're bringing is not sitting directly on the mizbeach. Why not? Because the basar is separating between this emurim and the mizbeach. Says the Gemara Shmuel, you're right, but you know what happened? B'shavchan, you flipped over the steak, so now both parts are on the actual fire. Rav Yechlan Amar afilu teima shlayavchan. V'amani Rav Shimoni damar afilu ela lasela chayiv. As we learned in the Mishnah, what does Rav Shimon hold? Rav Shimon holds that even if you put it on a rack, you're chayiv. It doesn't have to actually be on a mizbeach b'achotz, and therefore the fact that something's blocking would not block the chiyuv. Rav Amar min b'minoi einoi chaytz. It says, Rav, what is the shaila? Chatzitza does not exist when it's blocking by itself, and over here that's exactly what is happening. Continues the Mishnah. Mincha shlei nikmatza. If you have a mikarbon mincha, you didn't do the kamitza yet, and you brought it outside the base, this is your butter. But if you did kamsa v'chazar v'kamsa l'teicha v'kriva b'achot chayiv. If you did kamitza and then you brought it outside, you're going to be chayiv. Frakting amara amai. What's the reason in the end of the Mishnah that if you're kamsa v'chazar v'kamsa, you put the kamitza back in? Why are you chayiv livad al shirayin lekoimetz? The remainder should nullify. I took out a kamitza, then I put it back in. So the remainder there should nullify that which I took out, and therefore it should be as if there was no kamitza done. If there was no kamitza done, the first part of the Mishnah taught us there's no chiyuv. Amar Rav Zera nemar aktara bekoimetz nemar aktara b'shirayim. It says aktara by both. Just like by the burning of the kaimetz. One kaimetz is not mevatel the other. Says the Gemara, so it's not going to be mevatel that which is left will not be mevatel the kemitza. Continues the next Mishnah. Ha kaimetz v'alavayna shekrev. You have the kaimetz and the lavayna of a carbon mincha, which is makir v'achot ezecha mehem. The shekrev ezecha mehem b'achot chayiv. Rav Lezer pointed out shekrev ezecha sheni. Says Rav Lezer, no, you only chayiv when you bring the second one. Why? Because you only chayiv when you bring all the ikar, all the essential parts of the carbon, and therefore you need to bring both the kaimetz and the levayna to create the achiv. Echad b'fnim v'echad b'achotz. Then Rav Elazar agrees you're going to be chayiv. Shnei v'zich levayna. The 2 spoons of levayna from the lechem ha'apanim shukir v'secha me'em b'achotz chayiv. But if you did one inside and one outside, then indeed, even Rav Elazar's maskim, you're going to be chayiv. So says the Gemara, Bai Rav Yitzchak Navcha Kaimetz Ma'ushat Keneged B'Shirayim. Says Rav Yitzchak Navcha, what is the halacha whether kaimetz will permit against the remainder? Mishashari Kalushe Miklash. Says Rav Yitzchak Navcha, how does it work? When you burn the kaimetz, does it permit half of the mincha, or does it just weaken until you burn the rest of it? So says the Gemara, Libademan. Who are you asking according to? Rav Meir holds, there is a case of pigul, b'chatzi matir, by half of an item. So to over here in Mishashari, just like there'll be pigul, they'll be allowed to be meko, to matir. Says the Gemara, really? So according to Rav Meir, there's no shayla. 3 lines at the bottom, it says the Gemara, what are you going to say? We don't split it, and therefore, do we say that it's not mutter, or do we say not? What is Rav Yitzchak Navcha's kasha? This gufa is the shaila of the Gemara. According to the Rabban of our Mishnah, that when the Mishnah ended off and it said if you bring one outside of one inside, you're going to be chayiv. So according to that, the shaila is, what does it do? Does it burn it or does it weaken it? Says the Gemara, Teiku, we're going to have to wait for Eliyahu Hanavi for that one. Continues the Gemara with different avodas that are done b'achotz. Ha-zayrig mixes down b'achotz. What if you do zrika, part of the blood, b'achotz? As we turn over to Kav Yud Amud Beis, Rav Eliezer, nope, not Rav Eliezer, excuse me. Chayiv, Tanakam says, you're chayiv, Rav Eliezer, Omer, Av Amenasich, Mei hachag b'chag b'achotz chayiv. Also, if you pour the water of Sukkot outside, you're going to be chayiv. From the Nechemya Omer, Shiari Adam Shekrivu B'achotz, you're going to be chayiv. Says the Shiarim of the Dam, you're going to be chayiv. So says the Gemara, let's dive a little bit deeper. 1 second. Let's dive a little bit deeper. Amar Rava. Comes along Rava, and Rava explains, Umaydir Rav Eliezer is Maida B'dam with regarding to blood. The Tani Rav Eliezer Rav Shimon Aimri Mimakim Shapasak, who mascha, from the place where you ended placing the blood of the first behema, you continue placing the blood with the next behema. You don't have to repeat any part of it, and therefore each carbon is kosher independent of the other one. So similarly, if you're going to be makar b'achotz, you're going to be chayiv. Also, if you pour the libations, the nisach ha-mayim, the special avodah of pouring the water that we know is done on Sukkot, excuse me. Says Rav Yechon Mishem Rav Menachem Yudfa. Rav Elazar, Rabbi Shita, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Amar. Rav Elazar is going in the sheet of his Rabbi. Amar Nisachamayim Daraisa. Titani Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Nisachel, says the Torah. For that pasuk we learn Abishay Nisuch my custom Medaber, 2 types of libations. Echanisachamayim, Echanisachayayin. So Rabbi Akiva holds they're both midda araisa. So since Rav Elazar is saying in the Mishnah, if you do a bachot, you're going to be chayiv. He must hold like Rabbi Akiva. That what? If you're going to be chayiv for doing a bachot, must mean because he holds it to the araisa. So Amar le Rish Lakish, the Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, if we're learning Nizachamayim and Nizachayayin from the same pasuk frak to Gemara, so we're gonna have to say that both of them are going to be the same quantity. What's the problem? For Rav Elazar me'achag Amar, he only said the me'achag, only the water, which implies that it does not seemingly have the requisite quantity of shloisha slugin. He didn't specify a quantity. Says the Gemara, Nachamol and Ima lahalim b'sharim shana avkam b'sharim shana. Learning out Nusachel seemingly is not on a specific date, but says the Gemara, Ishta mitzeh ad Amar Rav Yosi. Rav Nacham Yudfasa that explains the sheet of Rav Eliezer that he said he's going within Rabbi Akiva. That's a daraisa. Says the Gemara, no, he's wrong. Really, he forgot Rav Asi. Damar Rav Asi Amar Rav Yechon Mishem Rav Yinachon Yoish Bekat Bechortan. Isernetiyos Arava Benizach Hamayim. All of these entities. Halacha l'Moshe miSinai. They're all halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Therefore, we do not have to say it's in Nusachel, that it's the same makar like Rabbi Akiva, both the yayin and the mayim from the same pasuk, and then we're bothered by the quantities, and then we're bothered, why is it only on Sukkot? No, it's halacha l'Moshe miSinai, and that's going to be the reason that if you bring your bachot, you're going to be chayiv. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. One last brayso, 4 lines from the bottom. Hamanazech shloshas dugin l'mayim bechag b'achot chayiv. Rav Shimon Aimer imalon l'shem chag chayiv. Says Rav Shimon, no, if you pour it for the sake of sukkahs, you're going to be chayiv. My benay, what's the chalik? Am nachma yitzak b'yishir b'mayim kamifli. They're arguing about, is there a shir for the nizach hamayim? According to the first sheet, the Tanakama of this brayso, yes, it's shloshas dugin. Because Rav Shimon, it's not. Rav Papa Amar, you know what they're arguing about? As we turn over to Kuf Yud Aleph, if you don't have the page, just read 1 line. Bekarva Nisacha Midbar Peligi, they're arguing whether there was Nisach HaMayim in the Midbar. Rav Elazar holds it was not. Tanakam holds that there were. Ravina Amar, Belamid Nisach HaMayim, Nisach HaYayim Peligi, they're arguing whether you learn out one from another. Pick it up on the top of Kuf Yud Aleph for the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.